السلام عليكم سادة الحضور، نرحب بكم في ورشة العمل الإلكترونية التي تنظمها وحدة التعليم المستمر في كلية الصيدلة جامعة بغداد، واللي نستضيف فيها أساتذة من كلية الصيدلة في جامعة نورث ستيت كاليفورنيا للتحدث عن وسائل التعليم المتقدمة في التعليم الصيدلاني. Greeting everyone, welcome to our workshop titled New Tools in Pharmacy Education. We are glad to host two distinguished speakers from North State, California University. They're here at their early morning. It's 8 a.m. for them. Good morning, Dr. Willie. Good morning, Dr. Islam. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thanks so much. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
So our first speaker for this evening is Dr. Islam محمد. Dr. Islam is an assistant professor at the Department of Pharmaceutical and Biomedical Sciences at California North State University College of Pharmacy. Dr. Muhammad earned his Bachelor of Pharmacy degree from Ain Shams University in Egypt in 2005, followed by his master's degree in neuroscience as a Fulbright Scholar from SUNY at Buffalo in New York in 2008, and his PhD in clinical and experimental therapeutics from the College of Pharmacy at the University of Georgia in 2014. After which he completed his postdoctoral training at the Division of Cardiology at Emory University School of Medicine, where in parallel, he also finished his additional training as an inpatient pharmacist intern at Emory University Hospital Midtown before joining the College of Pharmacy at California North State University in 2017. Dr. Muhammad has 12 high-impact original research publications and more than 28 peer-reviewed abstracts presentations to date in highly recognized research conferences. In addition, his track record includes several awards and recognitions. Most recently, Dr. Muhammad was awarded the 2021 Division of Pharmacology Educators Travel Award presented by the American Society of Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics, followed by the 2021 American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy Biological Sciences Section Excellence in Teaching Award. Dr. Muhammad also serves as a research mentor for the American Foundation of Pharmaceutical Education Gateway Award for one of the California North State University College of Pharmacy PharmD candidates. Dr. Islam, thank you for accepting the invitation and welcome. And please, if you can start your presentation.
Thanks so much, Dr. Kauthar, and thanks so much, everybody. So it's a great pleasure to be participating in this continuous education event led by our colleagues in the College of Pharmacy, Baghdad University in Iraq. It's really a pleasure. I had the honor to meet a couple of our colleagues, Dr. Ali Aziz and Dr. Kauthar, through our collaborations through the Arab American Pharmaceutical Educators and to our national meetings in the AACP over the past couple of years. So it's a great honor to be participating in this cross, collaboration, and hopefully, you all get to take at least, a couple items from today's presentation. Just a little bit of a disclaimer, I think number one, I will try to keep it in English, so it becomes readily available, whatever gets recorded and shared on different, media and channels of communication. And in between, I think maybe I can pause and reflect and using some Arabic, sentences as needed in the middle. So this is just the first disclaimer, so everybody can be on the same page. And a little bit of a second disclaimer also for my presentation today. The theme of my presentation, and perhaps also Dr. Wali Menti is my colleague, my dear colleague in California North State University College of Pharmacy. It will be more of sharing our hands-on experiences, using these teaching methodologies that I've been using in our system in California North State University. So at least for my presentation, I tried to keep it a little bit more hands-on, more casual. I tried to stay away from literature review and going through different references and all of that. I leave that to everybody, up to your own time and pace. You can go to literature, read papers as much as you can. So my focus will be really on sharing our hands-on experience for today's topic and how basically we went through the different, themes in person and online for today's presentation. So my presentation today is mainly focused on team-based learning in pharmacy education and what are the challenges and the lessons learned for both in-person and online environments. I just want to make sure everybody sees my PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, it's clear. Thank you.
Very good. Do you also see like the small screen of the speakers, or it's not showing because it's covering like the lower corner of my screen on this side?
It is covering the top right corner. Like, you mean your video screen, or?
Yeah, my own video screen, you know, because I'm trying to just move it to the side so it does not cover a lot of big space. So I want to make sure that the whole PowerPoint slide is visible for all the attendees.
It's just
We see your slide, yes.
Okay.
University logo that's not showing up. Yeah, it's
Okay.
clear.
Very good. Thank you so much. Perfect. So, okay, so just getting started, as I said, it's just mostly sharing our own experiences on how we do TBL and pharmacy education. So starting by the learning objectives. So hopefully by the end of this session, all the attendees will be able to identify the basic components and the general structure of team-based learning, or TBL, as an acronym, as a pedagogy or learning modality. And then hopefully we'll be also going over comparing and contrasting the TBL versus the conventional lecturing pedagogies that most of us are already used to. And then hopefully we'll go over also how to design appropriate level of application questions for TBL classes. What are the different kinds of application questions, the different levels of blooms, or from basic questions to higher level critical thinking questions, and also what are the different themes for applying these questions in TBL classes. And hopefully this will complement very well with Dr. Menti's presentation today, when he focuses more about the different tools and softwares that can be used in classrooms for improving students' engagement doing these kind of classes. We'll be also going a little bit and when we switch to compare versus between paper-based applications and electronic and online application tools, also, as I just mentioned, for TBL classes. And when we also cover the switch that we went through from in-person to online delivery during the pandemic, and what are the different platforms that we have considered, and how we came together at the end to put together our own system for delivering TBL classes effectively online and preserving the same components that already occur in regular classes in TBL, and how we can conduct that effectively in an online environment through different available platforms. So generally speaking, I would like to start with, like, a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. So simply speaking, this is the best way, in my opinion, to just compare and contrast very simply what is the difference between TBL classroom setting and traditional classroom for teaching and learning. So as you can see to the right part of the screen, traditional classrooms most of us are used to it. It's basically related to big lecture halls where all the students sit and next to each other, just listening to the instructor or the lecturer basically explaining. So it's more of a passive, what we can call a passive lecturing or passive learning style, where students just listen to all the the speakers notes and explanation and all of that. So it merely relies on the effectiveness of the teaching and the professor himself, rather than engaging the students and getting them to experience the hands-on applications of the material that they learn right on the spot. Versus the TBL classroom settings, which is to the left, and this is very similar to what we have in California North State. The TBL classroom really starts, as the name implies, it's simply speaking putting the class or the students into teams, into small team groups, so they can actually work together on the material that they learn, so they can apply what they learn on the spot, discuss with each other, bounce ideas with each other, go through exercises, and basically come to a consensus with each other in a team right in the lecture hall during the lecture itself. So the lecture hall by itself has to be divided into small team groups, small tables, and this is very similar to what we have, as I said. Some people even go to a higher level where we actually divide or have some separate rooms for teams so they can discuss quietly. But I think at the end, the spirit, it doesn't matter where it's separate in a room or in a lecture hall, the spirit is just basically having the class split into teams to work together and apply the information that they learn right in the lecture room, right there and then while they're learning the material. So to me, this is just the key slide that summarizes basically the backbone for the whole presentation, and summarizes what is the TBL structure, when generally speaking, in a nutshell. So as I said, this is available in different literature. There's tons of literature, different papers. And I welcome everybody just to Google and do their own homework and research about the different types of TBL structures and so forth. But very simply speaking, TBL can be classified into 3 different phases. Phase 1 is the preparation, which typically happens before class. This is, the first step. Because TBL is considered one of the flipped classroom pedagogies, where you actually rely on flipping the classroom, meaning you switch all the majority of the lecturing and the passive learning and all of that outside the class time. So before the class is technically considered part of the TBL classroom setup. And then during the class time comes the next 2 phases. The very first step during the class is the readiness assessment, which, as the name implies also, it's an assessment to assure the readiness of the students from the material that you shared with them before the class. And then once this gets finished at the beginning of the class, which is like the first 25 to 30%, you move on to the majority of the class being focused on phase 3, which is the application exercise. This is where the students get to spend and spend all the time of the class on applying what they learned during the class, and practicing the concepts and digging deeper and answering the questions together as a team, so they can learn and apply immediately and discuss with the instructor. And also you can have an inter-team discussion between different teams during the class itself. So these are the 3 major steps. First, as I shared, before the class, you flip or you switch most of the passive teaching outside of the classroom time. This is really where you share with the students early ahead. In our system, it's a week ahead, where you need to share with the students whatever the material that they need to go through and read, or make themselves familiar with it before the class. And this can be whatever the instructor prefers. It can be a simple handouts, Word or PowerPoint files. It can be assigning the students certain book chapters, recorded videos, as we're going to go over in the next few minutes. So whatever the reading material that you would like them to go through, they have to go through before the class. And then, as I said, during the class, it will be mainly focused on applying the things they learned. So the first step in a TBL setup is actually the readiness assurance test. As the name implies, you are assessing whether the students are ready for that. And this has 2 components. There's always an individual component where you assess every student individually, their competency. And there's the team readiness assurance test, or the TRAT, where you assess the same questions, but the students get to answer it in a team, with their teams, in a team environment. And these acronyms are the acronyms that we use in TBL in general. I know it's quite unfamiliar. There's RATs and BATs, but these are not the same RATs and BATs that we're used to. So when you hear the word RAT, it's an abbreviation for Readiness Assurance Test. And then we use the additional I for individual. That's an IRAT, the very first thing that you do in the class. And then when it becomes a team type of the same assessment, it becomes a TRAT, for example. So that's the Readiness Assurance Test. And then in between, you can spend some time going over the main concepts of the class. You can actually connect them to the Readiness Assurance Test that you just did. And then you move on to application exercises. And again, this can be team-based or TBATs, or you can also have some individual application exercises, and you can mix between them. In our class, we do a lot of team-based application exercises. And then at the end of the class, most of our instructors, they actually close the class with an individual assessment to recap on the students' learning during the classroom. So from now on, I'm going to just spend some time on every single step and what do we mean and what we do with every single step for the class. So we just covered the pre-reading or the before class time, which is, as I said, the flipped classroom part. This is basically where you outline for the students what are the learning objectives for the class. What are the things that they really need to grasp. So the very first slide, you just need to outline for them what are the major concepts. These are the learning objectives. You can share with them your handouts, your book chapters. And as I said, the goal for this is to free the actual class time for the applications and discussions rather than passive lecturing. And it depends on every instructor and every style. In our system, for example, we have a general recommendation of around 10 pages per class hour or credit unit. So for example, if you have a 3-hour class, ideally you should assign reading pages to be around 30 pages total, in order to be comparable and also matching with the total number of hours that the students have to spend in class. And moving on again, what are the next steps? The next step immediately in the beginning of the class is the readiness assurance test. And as the name implies, this can be either individual, which is the IRAT readiness assurance test, and then followed immediately by the TRAT. So the basic concept of this very first step, now you shared with the students before class everything that they need to learn. And by learning, you're not expecting them as well to be very advanced. You're just expecting them to read and become familiar with the topic for today. So what I like the most actually about TBL-based learning is, in addition to the applications, is when you hold the students accountable like this, when they have a very simple quiz in the very beginning of the class, this is where you really assess their readiness, as the name implies. You make sure and you hold them accountable that they did read the material, they did go through them, they are ready for the discussion and for hands-on application during class time. So as the name implies, the purpose of this simple quiz, it's, as I said, it's very simple, very low-level questions, just to assess the readiness of the students, and also to gear and to gauge how much did they really retain. What are the areas that are simple, they got it? What are the areas that it looks like, you know, they're still struggling with? And this also helps you to prepare for the discussion of the class when you see the results of these simple questions. And as I said, the goal of this level of the questions is have them very basic questions. And basic level questions, I refer to the Blooms Taxonomy. So just very quickly, you might be familiar with it already. Blooms Taxonomy is just an indicator of what are the different levels of the questions. It really starts from when you gear the level of the question for the first level, which is just remembering, recalling, making sure that they just understand the big concept. This is really where you want your RATs, your IRAT, and then the TRAT to be at that level. And then as you progress into the class itself, you can start building higher level questions more into the analysis and evaluation as they go through the class to encourage their critical thinking. So this is the very first step. You start with a simple question, 5, 6, 7 questions. They answer individually first, and then you ask them to answer the same exact questions again as a team. So you start with an IRAT, and then the team of the students do the same questions as a TRAT. And then at this point, as I said, you will be assuring that the students went through it. You will get a feel of how they are. And this is really where you can connect some of the mini lecture that you can go through over the main concepts with, you know, the students' answers. And that's exactly what I do in the class. So I share with them their results. And then I actually share, you know, tangle and you know, زي ما بيقولوا بالعربي بنطعمها جوه الكلاس, inside the class itself. So basically, you share with them every question, show them what concept this question ties to, and then you can recap on it and assess the students' performance in that the first, like, you know, 20, 30 minutes immediately after the TRAT, which also sets the stage for the next step, which is the application questions. So again, back to the big theme. Before the class, they already read all the material, they are prepared. The very first thing that they did during the class is IRAT, Individual Readiness Assurance Test, and then they answered the same quiz as a team. And then you tangle this, you know, concepts and go over the questions with them and give them an idea to, you know, express their opinions, express their thoughts, and discuss. And this is where some of the teaching can happen during the TBL class. And then you move on to the actual, you know, bulk time of the classroom, which you get to spend. And I think this is really the strength of TBL, is spending time in the application exercises. So moving on to the last part, as I said, this is the time where you also can design additional questions for the teams to go through it, where you encourage the students to think about it as a team. And this really adds the additional layer of peer learning. So the teams, when they go over the question, they are totally free to talk to each other, discuss with each other, you know, understand more. It's also, these application questions inside the class are open book. IRATs and TRATs, that's one difference, by the way. The very beginning ones, the IRATs and the TRATs, are actually closed book because they should be ready. They are assessing their readiness. But as you move on to the application exercises, this is, you know, you ask the students, it's an open book, you have your handouts, you have the discussion that you just went through, let's go over some applications. So it's an open book, open discussion kind of application. So again, it's the team-based applications, and this is really where you get to dig deeper into the concepts, try to promote critical thinking, try to move and scaffold gradually into higher level questions where you ask the students to apply the concept that they learn. maybe to analyze, certain types of like short cases or mini cases or even a long case if you'd like to. And all the way up, the sky's the limit if you can actually design some assessments to promote the students' evaluation skills, or maybe even create their own projects. So the team applications can be in a wide range of, of different levels of application questions. And this is really what I want to share with you, some of the experiences or our hands-on experience of how to conduct these application questions. So generally speaking, at least from my own experience, you can categorize the way to conduct the kind of applications into two different styles. You can always use paper-based applications where, if you don't have the facilities or the software capacity or resources to apply with the students, and each one of them has its own benefits. This is just an example of our own students and how creative they can be as much as you want designing these paper-based applications. These pictures are actually from some of the posters that the student teams did in class, and we actually hang these posters in the hallways of our building, so the students get to see their own achievements, kind of stimulate their thinking and all of that. So paper-based has its own utility. You can design simple, classic, whether it's multiple choice questions, whether it's a case, whether it's coming up with a poster like these applications over here, and you can see how creative the students can be, all the way up to whatever style, which also, as I said, can accommodate the different resources available. If you don't have resources or access to software, you can use, simply speaking, paper-based applications for the students to get engaged. On the other hand, there's also an additional advantage, and as I said, hopefully this will complement with my dear colleague, Dr. Menti's presentation in the next 30 minutes or so. So where you get to engage the students using electronic or paperless applications. So you can leverage the facilities or the resources, like, whether it's Canvas, which is our learning management system. You can use Turning Point. You can use all the free softwares available like Kahoot, Edpuzzle, all these different softwares where you can build your assessment online. And you can actually ask the students during class to log into these online platforms with their laptops, with their cell phones, whatever can be accessible. And then they can get to answer these questions immediately online this way. And, when I wanted to spend a minute or two just showcasing and comparing and contrasting, what are the different utilities? In my opinion, generally speaking, going paperless versus paper-based results in two main differences that you get to see when you start practicing TBL the most. Number one, when you go paperless, it takes away a lot of the steps needed that you can see with the paper-based. For example, there's no grading needed. When you design your applications electronically, it's automatically graded in there. You don't have to spend time grading the paper-based applications after class, that we usually do as instructors. So the grading is immediately there. And most importantly, the students get to see the results immediately during class. So that's another key feature that is also built in as a concept in TBL, which is the immediate feedback that you get to share with the students during a TBL setting. And that's really key, because it really helps you to show them, the answer immediately, show them what are the things that they got, what are the things that they didn't get, what are the options or the answers that might be a little bit confusing, that sometimes you add them as an instructor in purpose to really show and ask them to dig deep and critically think why this option is not correct versus the other option, what can be more correct. So that immediate interaction and immediate feedback component is a very good leverage. It's a very important skill and very important tool that you get to use and get the benefit of from the TBL setup. And of course, as I said, paper-based, it has its own pros and cons. There are, it allows you for, additional level or different types of paper-based applications like the posters, coming up with a project and all of that. So every tool and every direction has its own pros and cons in general. And this is just an example of from my own classes. This is simple, software, which is Canvas, the learning management system, as a quiz. And this is just an example to show you what I meant by, basic level questions and higher level questions, and how can you engage the students with that immediate feedback to stimulate higher level thinking. So as you can see, lower level, like an IRAT or a TRAT, basic level questions, students recall, simple, most of the students get 90% or 85% or above. So really this, you get to share with them and show them immediately how this question covers the major concept. And then when you move on to the TBAT and IBAT, when you design like a short mini case where there's a little bit of a critical thinking, you get to see these components of how you can build, okay, which one of these answers can be correct. You can see that some of them alluded to choosing this option versus the other options. And and some of it can be actually on purpose. So you can actually outline to them why this question or this answer can be the best, and why this answer is very close, but it cannot be 100% correct, and so forth. And this is also can be a very nice setup to stimulate the inter-team discussion. So you can ask a team when you show the the answer for them during class on the projector screen. You can tell them, okay, which team can explain this answer, and then you can ask another team why this answer you think is not the best answer, and then you can stimulate this and facilitate that cross-team discussion. So which is also another component of TBL that we as instructors will start to step back a little bit and get into the facilitator role for discussion rather than just plain instruction. So this is all covering like the general basic concept of how we do TBL in person. And then when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we all faced the question of the simple question: how can we conduct an effective TBL class with all these components, with the team discussion, the synchronicity, the immediate feedback, and all of that? How can we take all this experience and move it online? And we were faced with that question. Of course, all of a sudden, like within a week, all the instructors were actually asked to switch and take that whole experience, into online. And this was really a challenge, but I'm happy to share with you that our experiences and what we did. So our immediate response as a college, we came up actually with what they call the Distance Education Task Force, which myself and Dr. Menti had the pleasure to chair, back in early like in spring 2020. So we came together and we put our thoughts: how can we project back all these components of the TBL classroom and take it into online? So together as a task force, we went back to every single step, as we're going to go over the next few minutes, and then we tried to make sure that this can be smoothly transferred into an online environment. So again, back to the big structure. Let's go back about the simple steps: before class preparation, during class, IRATs, discussion, applications, how every piece can be translated online. So back again, starting with the before class, what we decided is, I think, we all recommended as a college that it will be much helpful for the students if we can actually add additional tools for them, where we can actually record our handouts, our instruction for them, whether it's voice over PowerPoint. This is just one of my own recordings on one of my own classes, where you can actually record a video or even a simple voice on top of your PowerPoint handout and make it available for the students. There's different softwares available for that: PowerPoint by itself, Screen Customatic, VoiceThread, all these softwares. Some of them are free, some of them are not expensive to have. Some even instructors, like the ones that do calculations on pharmaceutics, they actually resorted to having a doc cam where you can actually project all the handwriting and the explanations and record that and make it available for the students. So, and overall, our assessment after the online pandemic, students really liked having these resources available for them because they can listen to the explanation, they can refer back to it at any time point. And actually, once it's recorded, even for us as instructors, it is available. You can share with the students at any time for any class. So that really took care of the component of having, or the preparation before the class time. And then we started thinking again, what can we do, especially for the actual during class time? How can we move these tables that you saw for team discussions virtually online? And this is really where our task force got together and we did a very rough analysis of the different online platforms that are available up to this day. From our experiences, the ones that are immediately already available are, of course, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Big Blue Button, which is a feature inside Canvas for having online classrooms, and also the GoToMeeting, which is another popular platform that people use for conducting seminars. So very quickly, we put our heads together and we're starting analyzing and pinpointing what are the pros and cons for every software, and we just took it from there. So simply speaking, the key, what we were looking for, so it's something that is free, or free for us as an institution, that is simple, user-friendly, that actually has that feature of, dividing the students into teams, so they can discuss together when they are doing the TBL learning, and also have the feature for discussion and cameras and all of that. And then the discussion really came down to these three softwares. And finally, we divided on Microsoft Teams. So for us, really, Microsoft Teams was the platform that really was able to reflect the experience from the in-person to the online classroom. This is, again, the page of my course, for example. And as you can see, the basic feature that we can really leverage for Microsoft Teams or any other platform is the ability to break the audience, your classroom, into what they call virtual rooms. This can be either breakout rooms that you can see in Zoom, you can see on other softwares, or what is called in Microsoft Teams channels. So this is really how the virtual, look or the setup of the class on Microsoft Teams look like. You can actually create channels, which are the permanent breakout rooms, and you can have a general channel, which is parallel or the online version of the general classroom. This is where all the students join, for the shared discussion, for the mini lecture, for the inter-team, discussion after they do the application and all of that. And this is all the channels or the permanent breakout rooms that you can create for all the student teams. So at the time of application, at the time of exercise, you ask them to go to their rooms, to their teams, to their tables. These are the virtual tables for the discussion, where they can just, talk to each other as a team, go over the application questions, and then, submit their answers, and afterwards come back to the general channel for the overall discussion. So for us, that was really the major feature that we really liked on Microsoft Teams. And as I said, in addition to additional benefits, and moreover, when you compare it to other softwares, as I just discussed, other softwares like Zoom and others, they also have the features for breakout rooms, but most of them, they actually have to do it either manually or they create the breakout rooms randomly. Or you have to go through some sort of a setup where you create a list in Excel and then upload the Excel to Zoom, some sort of like additional setup to have this structured TBL. And if I take also a couple step backs, these student teams are actually fixed. Like in the beginning of the semester for a TBL system like ours, our Office of Academic Affairs, they are the ones, the office itself, that actually go over the whole student body for the whole class, the cohort. And they're the ones that, assign the teams for the students. So the teams are set in the beginning of the semester. It's fixed for the whole semester. So students are kind of like, a little bit forced to work with the team throughout the semester in all courses. So the team setup, we wanted also to maintain that component, because this is also part of the TBL training, that students are mimicking the real life scenario, that you have to work with the team that you have, because sometimes in your work environment, you cannot really change your team. And also there's additional layers in designing these teams that, that Office of Academic Affairs puts into consideration. There's also another dimension that you can mix higher performing students with the lower performing students to encourage that team and peer learning so they can help each other. So, this together, this is what we really came to conclusion that Microsoft Teams set up. It is a little bit of work in the beginning of the semester to set up the teams, and I'm going to go over how the different features and how the different settings that you can do. But it's a one-time setup in the beginning of the semester, and then when it's done, it is available. Students, know they picked it up really in the first week or so. In addition to all of this, also that I wanted to share with you, it also has built-in quizzes, assignments, and grades. So that's another feature as well, that if you don't have the resources like Canvas and other resources or other softwares, these are also built in Microsoft Teams that you can take advantage of for building these electronic assignments and applications and all of that right there in the same page. So this is just very quickly how you can set it up in Microsoft Teams. Teams is synonymous for the course. So you can start it and then you can set it up, design it as a class. And then again, you can manage your team, start creating your own channels and add the students to it from your own institutions or outside the institution. And just some key points, when you add these channels, make sure that they are private, channels where students are limited in their ability to change the teams and all of that. This is just a little bit of technical tips that we also learned along the way. So basically speaking, if you leave it as standard, students might have the ability to change it, but if you keep it as private, you maintain your control as an instructor in these private channels, and you can actually set what students are able to do during the classroom and so forth. And this is again also maintaining the privacy, and at the end you make sure that you as a course coordinator and the instructor are actually the owners of the team page, and others are just guests, so they cannot change the settings. And this, as I said, also additional features that are available in Microsoft Teams with other platforms that really helps to take control and take charge of the TBL environment online as smoothly as compared to the in-person situation. And these are again the settings, to allow multiple participants to share and all of that. And again, this is where you get to have these, interactions with the students, ask them to, find the answer, come back to the general channel, give some application questions and discussions, and so forth. So I think with that, comes to an end from my presentation. I hope this gave you a little bit of an overview about how we conduct TBL as a concept, how we usually do it, in person, in an online in-person environment where we engage with the students directly one-on-one, and also how we went over the hurdle of trying to transfer this efficiency of the in-person to online as much as possible. What are the different levels of questions, and how can we tangle the online softwares with the TBL setup? And at this point, I'll be happy to take any further questions, or if you would prefer, you can keep the questions at the end after the second presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Islam. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and sharing your experience. It's really amazing how you transferred from in-class to a very successful virtual team-based learning. I think, as we said, we'll keep the Q&A to the end of the session, and I do have a few questions, but we'll keep them at the end as they might be answered by Dr. Menti's presentation. So that's bringing us to our next speaker, Dr. Willie Menti. I welcome Dr. Menti, and if you want to share your slides. Dr. Menti earned his Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of Southern California School of Pharmacy in LA, California in 1997. Afterward, completion of postgraduate year one, PGY1 residency training, and worked as a clinical and licensed pharmacist. Over the years in the inpatient hospital settings, provided Dr. Menti experience and opportunities in the following settings: ICU, ER, NICU, pediatrics, cath lab, interventional radiology, and others. Has extensive staffing experience and roles while working in community, private, country, and HMO inpatient hospital settings, and precepting pharmacy residents in accredited residency programs involved various shifts during the day, evening, and graveyard shifts. Dr. Menti began his faculty teaching career at California North State California North State University College of Pharmacy in 2010. Since then, he has been a strong advocate for faculty utilization of electronic audience response system to promote active participation during lectures. His teaching has been adaptable to both in-person and virtual classrooms while utilizing today's industry and technology to allow students to respond and interact electronically across various personal device platforms. Dr. Menti utilizes tools to allow for active engagement of students in the large classroom and offer versatility with learning and interactivity in a way that is different, known as Hotspot Question type. Dr. Menti leads and model this method of teaching at California North State College of Pharmacy to help learners absorb and apply visual data to make decisions in practical laboratory assignments and on job practice sites. Over the years, he has encouraged faculty at the university to utilize technology in the classroom to help learners by engaging students with visual material to test their ability to identify things by their appearance. Dr. Menti values helping faculty learn how to utilize new tools with major enhancements for use at the course level, design hotspots visual questions types for examination purposes, and construct hotspot questions type from more than one teaching platform for assessment. Dr. Menti, thank you for joining us today, and welcome, and please you can start sharing your slides.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful audience. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. And this is my title slide, Software Tools and Applications for Enhanced Student Engagement in Pharmacy Education. I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. I wanted to basically try to show faculty the advancements in technology I've seen in my career and use in the College of Pharmacy. Also kind of try to teach you how to utilize teaching technology and highlight some of the advantages they offer. I want to also show some of the hurdles and limitations with previous generations of clickers. Those are known as ARS, audience response systems, and leaderboard tracking capabilities when administering Jeopardy style review games, and also help faculty design friendly competition for large classroom settings that will allow individuals as well as teams to participate and stay engaged during lab or class, and improve teaching and board preparation using Hotspot and share answer capabilities through the session IDs in classrooms and distant learning sites. So just imagine if your student was studying all night for an exam or a quiz the next morning, and they've got all this thoughts and energy in their mind and they're ready to take your exam. So the question to the audience is, how do you assess your learners? Do you have them write essays or samples? Do you have them provide short answer responses, multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks, quizzes, true and false questions, for exams and tests? Perhaps an oral presentation that you ask them to do, matching questions, multiple drop-down types questions, formula questions, file uploads, case questions, rubrics, or even have them write reflection papers. So how do you assess your learners? Are you having them role play? So these are all things that can be done in the classroom. Over the years, there's been technology out there that's helped us tremendously answer a lot of these in the classroom as well as online. I'm going to show you a couple of them throughout this presentation. So my first objective is to try to show you the advancements and technology that I've seen in my career and used at California North State. I'm going to be keying in on certain ones. This is a kind of a timeline of interest. If you're interested in seeing how I came about with a lot of the knowledge and experience that I've gained when I was working back at Kaiser as Jeopardy education coordinator, I saw how the pharmacist was using these Jeopardy style review games using PowerPoint. And then as I got into pharmacy school, I started using Turning Point. But back then, Turning Point was really early. As an experiential education area coordinator, I realized that some of the limitations that the students had to be within a certain distance, they had to be in the classroom. And then as the years progressed, as the technology improved and servers became more quicker, the Turning Point actually got a lot better. They started to develop into the more online platform using TT polls. And then I saw that students who had far more capability than just simply to click in, they were actually able to start to do a lot more. So this is where I'm going to take you through the journey. So at CNU COP, we had these plastic cards that we used for years in the classroom. They had these colors, A, B, C, D, E. And the faculty would ask the students or teams to basically identify their answer responses by lifting up a card in the classroom. So this was good. It had its utility. But then again, over the years, we started to realize that it had some limitations because there was pros and cons to seeing and expecting that student teams would simultaneously raise their answers in the classroom. And then after that, we started contracting with Turning Technologies, acquiring these LCD type push button calculator credit card size finger keypads. And they were good for a time, but then again, they had limitations. They were only allowing students to respond in terms of numbers or letters. So we realized that it was good. There was feasibility with the Turning software that we had. And we understood that we needed more than that. So this slide basically just talked about how when you're using Turning Point, you can type in multiple choice type questions first into a Word document, and then you can do mass import of your question types into Turning Point so that you don't have to spend a lot of time retyping the multiple choice questions. So this was good. You're able to provide students during the classroom multiple choice questions and have them respond, click A, B, C, or D, or E as an answer choice. And then you can take that result and import it directly into our integrated Canvas learning management system to save time and reduce errors in transferring exam scores and test quiz results from the students. Now, moving forward in the objective 2, we're going to try to teach the faculty how to utilize teaching technology and highlight some of the advantages that they offer. So remember that those cards that we talked about that had the color codes A, B, C, D, E. Imagine you had a question like this that I would put up in a typical class or a continuing education program, and I asked the audience to respond to this type of question. So they would look at it and they would decide, okay, what's the best answer choice? And then they would come up perhaps with the correct answer choice. They would select B, they would either click into it or erase their card. So this is what it kind of looked like. And then of course you can repeat the types of questions over and over and get similar types of responses as the audience is pretty much selecting whether it's a multiple choice or true and false. So that's what it looked like. And then in the early days, we were offering these hospital type pharmacy Jeopardy games back in the classrooms. And they were good for a while, but they had limitations as well because students can only collect one box using PowerPoint. And they weren't able to do any more than that other than click. Someone had to tabulate the scores by hand, but then that all changed, and I'm going to show you how. So we would, in the old format, we used to have these Jeopardy boxes. We'd click on a box, or the student would select the box, and then the question would come up, and then after that they would answer it, and if they got the question correctly, they would earn a certain point amount or dollar amount that you assigned to the question. So those were good, but then we moved forward in our ability and our capability, and we kept redesigning these Jeopardy style board games. So when we created these active learning activities in order to engage students inside and outside the classroom, we realized that all of this technology and all these efforts that we were doing in the classroom are now all possible today with what we call TTPOL cloud-based online technology using Session ID. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of journey of that. This name and term might sound foreign or unfamiliar to a lot of people, even in academia as I speak to it. ttpol.com, they don't know what that means from their perspective, but I'll explain that a little bit as I delve more into this presentation. So the third objective, I'm going to show you how I solved some of the hurdles and limitations with these previous generations of clickers. I started to introduce leaderboard tracking capabilities when administering Jeopardy style review games. And then, so these are basically a lot of newer ongoing approaches to engage all students in large classroom settings. And I started to do this online as well as in the classroom. And here's a link that's provided that you can visit. It's the Turning Point website. They talk about how this stuff is done as far as online engaging. So this would be like a simple example of a class that I would teach. I would provide this website, and I'll have the student log into their personal account and provide them a session ID that I create. And in this particular topic, I call it performance of diagnostic testing for clinical decision making. Pretty advanced topic for pharmacy students as they're learning about diagnostic testings and how to make decisions. But I was able to convert this type of knowledge to an online format using these advanced tools of ttpol.com with session ID. So what I realized this allowed is that it allowed for Canvas integration. As students were responding, they were using an active Turning Point subscription. I created as a faculty a session ID. We started a ttpol session, and I would save each of the files and then import that information all into the Canvas gradebook. So it was virtually error-free using that process. So utilizing this technology, using the cloud-based computing with subscription-based, the instructor as myself was able to update sync features of what the students were inputting into the app and the faculty. And using what we call an Instructor Account, which I'll show you in a little bit, I was able to basically take the students' information input from what they responded in the class or online. As opposed to manually, I was able to convert that digitally into the Canvas LMS because it was integrated into our backbone learning management system. So basically that eliminated a lot of manual updates. Every time a roster changed on our network where a student either, whether they dropped the program or they had a name change or they changed a team, we used to have to do a lot of these things online, but now with the new TTPOL cloud-based technology and subscription-based, it kind of virtually eliminated all that. So we were no longer, as a result of that, we were no longer restricted to only creating what we call multiple choice answer choices question type, where the students were asked to collect A, B, C, D on a response. Now they were able to actually type in their responses, and they were actually able to click in a response. So this basically increased their capability and various modality of being able to respond to an instructor's question type. And I'll try to show you a little bit of that. So this is a instructor and student account portal website where the students will sign in with their account, type in the session ID that's provided with the instructor, and you'll see the website address linked above up there using Turning Point. And the sign in is pretty straightforward. If they don't have an account, the first thing they will do is create an account with Turning Technology. And basically, it allows them to continue to use their audience response system in the classroom, but then it also elevated the whole process because it allowed them to not only do that, but now they're able to be online and they were able to use ttpol.com, put in a session ID with their subscription, and now they can actually start to type in responses. They can start to click in responses, as well as continue to utilize clicker responses online. And basically what it did, it allowed students to basically do everything that they did in the classroom in addition, and now they no longer needed their clickers as a result of that. So this is what a typical instructor account looks like, and you'll see the web posting of the URL there in the slide. And these are sort of like the classes that I have, that I've used Turning Point in. So I wanted to show you how I designed a friendly competition for large classroom settings that allowed individuals as well as teams to participate and stay engaged during class or lab. So this would be my objective number 4. So one of the first things I would do is I would create a rule book. I call this Dr. Menti's game competition rules. I would sort of give them criteria of what they have to do first and how they have to play and how they have to form teams. So I'll create these game setups and I'll tell them to participate in the team. And then for each of my type of criteria in the game, I would include things like fastest responder, participant leaderboards, team leader board, wager, and team MVP board. So I'd create these competition rules and have the students abide by that in the classroom. And then I would allow the students to actually be engaged in the process and choose a team. And then as they're choosing the team, I would finalize that team. And I would create these board-style, Jeopardy-style link games that had URLs in various corners of the menu option. And then I would able to identify in real time who the group MVP was, give them a final question. And here, this is more different types of ways to lay out a game. You can put icons. You could put, you can, in a sense, assign any scoring that you want for these types of games. So moving really quickly through this process, I wanted to, now I want to take the time to try to contrast between Turning Point without TT poll and in the new approach of using TT poll. So in the beginning, when we started, they were using these clickers. So Turning Point standard individual clicker audience response technology without online capability. So they were only able to have about, let's say, 3 or less contestants during the classroom per team. And it worked well as an individual playing, but then it didn't have any scoring, tracking, or challenges. There was no online capability to host any type of competition. All the scoring had to be done manually, and it required an audience to click a clicker within a certain designated range. But when I went to TT poll with session ID, cloud-based participant list, now the audience was also able to have up to 10 teams, and the whole classroom was able to play all as individuals. The scores and results were all reflected in real-time tracking instantaneously, and I was able to show the audience their team response MVPs, as well as identify individual team scores pretty quickly in real time and report that. And the students no longer needed clickers at that time, all by the use of using TT poll with session ID. So it was a really fast-paced, very highly interactive team competition game mode during the classroom in an online setting during the COVID era. So this is how I did that, showing you based on these slides and the links without going into the specific hyperlink details. But I wanted to also show you a different thing that I did with objective number 5 of how I was able to help improve teacher teaching of board preparation using Hotspot and short answer capabilities through cloud with session ID in the classroom in distant learning education. So I had now the students not only provide an answer choice by clicking on a response or typing an answer. Now, all of a sudden, the missing link gave me more room and more capability to assess the students' responses in real time. So this was a visual piece of the puzzle that was missing the whole time in all this education and teaching effort in the classroom or online. So I call this my case or a hotspot question type. You might have heard this. It's a practical way to improve assessments. Some people might be thinking of hotspot, the term hotspot as the sun, but that's not quite the point. So it might be confusing for a lot, so I'll help clarify it. Because during this presentation, I use the word hotspot. Some of you might be thinking of a mobile phone or mobile hotspot that you carry around from your cellular service provider, or some internet Wi-Fi hotspot like an airport or coffee shop that you visit, or something that's in excess of 120 degrees. But that's not the hotspot that I'm talking about. The one that I'm talking about here is hotspot question type. So using TT poll with session ID, all of a sudden the students are able to use their mouse or their iPad or their mobile phone. And I can throw in a question like this, a multiple choice, a multiple response, or a constructed response question format, or order response question format, or hotspot question type. And these are all the question types that our students take when they're encountered with NAPLEX type questions. These are the types of question responses that they're expected to be able to answer. So I'll give you an example. So here is a question type that the board may ask on a student's licensure exam, wherein the HIV life cycle doesn't ravening, it serves as a mechanism of action, and the student will have to essentially select the correct spot on the diagram, or if it's in a multiple choice questions, they'll either select A, B, C, D, and they have a 1 in 4 chances of getting this question correct. So it may not necessarily test ideally whether or not they know the true correct answer. So when you put it in a hotspot question format using a diagram, now all of a sudden it's different, and now the student really has to know where the answer is. So the question can be rephrased like this using the diagram below. Identify where in the HIV life cycle Moraveric serves as a mechanism of action. Select the text response and left-click the mouse to change your answer to move the question. Select the alternate text response and click. So now all of a sudden the students, from having to go from A, B, C, D, E, has to now select the correct response on the actual pictorial diagram. And if they don't select the correct area of the diagram, they'll get the answer incorrectly. So you may have already heard of examples. Some people in the audience may have already heard of examples of different subscription-based online tools that have hotspot capabilities to engage student learners. We know out there, out in the world, there's already Adobe Captivate, Canvas LMS, ExamSoft Enterprise Portal. We here at California North State use the ExamSoft Legacy Portal, which has limited hotspots features, but it still works. You might have heard of a HighSpring Suite or PollenV, or Google Slides with Poll Everywhere or Turning Point Hotspot. But this is an example of a PollenV, where you can pay for a subscription and acquire capabilities to do hotspots. So you can put a map and you can ask the audience to identify areas of the map, like where we're located here in California, Northern Cal. And so I'm going to show you and share with you my personal pick for hotspot capability using 3 softwares that we use here at the college. One is Turning Point with Session ID. The other one is Canvas, called New Quizzes. And the other one is the ExamSoft Legacy Portal. So each of these have what I call pros and cons as far as countdown timers, student roster, LMS integration, remote hybrid capability, display class results with pictures as a hotspot, or whether they display individual student pictures hotspot, or allows multiple hotspots per questions, or integrate question hotspots into PowerPoint, polls entire class in real time, or shows student results during polling, or hotspots with shapes other than rectangles, which is very important, or being able to lock down student browser during an online session when you don't know exactly what they're doing other than attending your online session. So I'm going to show you what my pick is. So the remote hybrid capability is obviously a big feature. So think about this: if you're an audience and you were asked, as a, let's pretend you're a student, you were asked to click on the group of 4 ducks. So you had to basically identify in this picture, where are the ducks? So this is a kind of like an area that shows you, okay, here are the ducks, they're in the center. So the red would indicate that that's an incorrect response at this point. Now, this would be a typical question type 2 that we can ask an audience. We can say, for example, where is South Dakota? So in order to correct the correct answer, the students would have to be able to click on the South Dakota, and you see represented here, the green dots are the correct answer, whereas everyone else selected the incorrect answer. Now, this is another fun one for hotspot, more practical. In this particular question, we can ask the audience the question, where is the little tiny eagle on the front of a $1 bill? So if anybody knows where that little eagle is, they can click on that hotspot. So I'm going to show you where that is. And that little eagle is actually in there. So I can hone in into that little hotspot, and you can see a little eagle in that little circle. So now just for fun, I showed you that. But in all seriousness, when it comes to healthcare, you can ask healthcare related questions. So a typical, let's say, for example, a nursing question, if you had a college of nursing that you collaborate with, the nurses could be asking questions like, where is the superior vena cava located? So they can show a diagram of a heart, and then the students would have to be able to know that the superior vena cava is there, so they would click on that answer. So this is one example, or perhaps where is the left ventricle located, and they would click on that area. So you can pull these types of diagrams or images from Microsoft Virtual Reality, come up with these types of slide and create it in a classroom setting. And you can ask questions like, in an anatomy course, where is the mitral valve located? And then the students perhaps might be click on the wrong valve, but the actual vowels actually be located there and indicated by the green zone. Or the question could be point the location of the vessel where the centrally administered drugs enter first. So you can see that this is really applicable to pharmacy type questions, because the students will have to know that when you're administering these drugs that have to be centrally administered, this is where the drug is actually going into. And this is where I want to share with you my knowledge and experience with Turning Point. If you go to the website turning.com, you'll see this company offers a lot of these tools that I use in the classroom settings, and they can give you an understanding a little bit about some of the softwares that they use. The one I use in particular is Point Solutions. There's also Dojo 360 or Nobly, but Point Solutions is the one that I find most useful for a lot of our practical purposes in the classroom for faculty. And I chose here the region North and South America. I signed into my Turning Point account, and then from there I'm able to download the desktop app version, or you can download a web-based version, and then you sign in. And as you sign into your account, you will be taken to the screen. As you can see on the left, I've used this in various courses, many throughout the years. And as I'm building my PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to show you a little bit of training on how I do that. I'll take for example, I'll start a new slide. I'll say, based on these options here, you'll see the new tools, objects, compete, and tools. One of the first things I'll do, I'll assign a hotspot question. I'll take a picture of my choosing, and I'll load it right in there. And from that point on, I'll identify an area where I'll add a hotspot, and I'll say, that's where I want the hotspot to be. And then I'll go into the top, I'll assign the session ID that I'll make up and I'll reserve, and then I'll start a session for my audience. So back in the days when I didn't have this hotspot capability, I was teaching diagnostic testing, and I had asked a student a question like this: which is the following best identifies the cutoff point on a receiver operating characteristic curve at which optimal sensitivity and specificity of a diagnostic device are achieved to get the most accuracy when typing, trying to separate those who have the disease from those who do not have the disease. So at the time when I was testing the students this type of question, 25% of the time they could have got the question correctly without even knowing or understanding the question to begin with, or the answer choices. But then I realized that they had limitations. So I actually, even though they correctly identified answer C, tangent line and ROC curve for corresponds to optimal sensitivity and specificity, I realized that there was limited. So I had to think of ways to utilize hotspot technology in the classroom or online. And now I started to ask them to click on the area of the ROC curve that determines the optimal sensitivity and specificity using their classroom knowledge and the reading of the textbook. Now all of a sudden the students were able to demonstrate that visually. So as we saw here, and I was able to add a timer to the actual response and everything. And now all of a sudden my students were able to identify and show me in real time, based on the green dots there, that the majority of them did understand that. And there was a few scattered results where some students didn't understand what the question is, or where knew that area of the curve was that determined optimal sensitivity and specificity. So they clicked as denoted by the red dots. So this was one of the breakthroughs that I discovered using hotspot technology, that I can ask the same types of questions, similar knowledge base, in a different way. So this is now going into the reporting mechanism using the Turning Point. There's all kinds of ways to report answer choices. You can do these types of diagrammatic illustration reports, and a lot of these types of reports can be exported into an Excel file using your Turning Point desktop app. You can see here there's just more ways to look at results. And you can also ask different types of results. So here in this type of question hotspot, I asked them to basically identify the database that contains what I call the top 200 drugs. This is an area that we quiz and expect our students to know throughout their P1 year in pharmacy school. So now all of a sudden, we're able to assess where the students knew, if they knew where to access resources for top 200 drugs to study for our quizzes. And some students actually still did not know at the time. And of course, you can also ask them different types of questions. And this one is particular about top 200 injectable drugs through Access Pharmacy. And here's just another one very similar about Lexicom and its content. And then another one about IV compatibility question. So as the IV sterocompounding faculty champion, I tend to ask a lot of these IV sterocompounding type questions. And I'm going to show you another one that I've dealt with. And now when I'm using those hotspots or multiple choice question type capabilities, another one of the tools I can do is in Turning Point technology is called Comparative Analysis. So I can identify the audience's question before and after, and then I can do comparison. So this is just another way to assess how the students are learning and improving before and after, and display it into graphical format to show the audience or the students during class in real time as they're clicking on their responses. Here's one that I can show you how I did before and after using Hotspot. So in this particular question type, I'll ask them, which of the following medication on this electronic medication administration record is considered a drip as opposed to main IV fluid? So the student would have to indicate to me in their knowledge when they knew where the drip was as opposed to maintenance IV fluid. So they clicked on the response, and you can see a lot of them clicked on the correct answer and some of them did not. And then I asked them the same question again, a second time, and I was able to actually compare their answers and show them in real time how they improve from before to after, as you can see denoted by these two slides. So this is the instructor account. You'll note it here on the web portal, instructor.turningtechnologies.com, and that'll help you get started if you're interested in delving into this technology. So this is another technology that I'm going to show you. I'm going to move away from Turning Technology, and I'm going to show you if you have something like Canvas LMS at your college, you can use as well. With our subscription, we have ability to create, start, and schedule using Canvas. Now, this is just another one of Hotspot using Turning Point. So I'm going to kind of really quickly go through this part really quickly and kind of show you a little bit more about the Canvas side. So these are just more Hotspot questions. So here's the Canvas side right here. So Canvas has what's called Next Quizzes, another next generation of QuizNext type applications using Hotspot technology. I'm going to show you how I get into that. But here's a question where I asked students to be able to identify in this picture in our mock IV sterile compounding room on the second floor to click on the area that has the highest positive pressure airflow in comparison to adjacent rooms, such as, and adjacent rooms, what we meant by is ante-room or storage room. So the students were able to click on the correct answer choices, or I can show them a different type of question here where they can being asked to place a vial in the most optimal place on an IV sterile compounding hood. So then the students were able to click on that. So I'm going to move quickly through this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits and improvements of using TTPL with Session ID, and also one of the advantages that you can think of is that students can use any devices. They can use their phone, whether they have an iPhone or Android. They can use their laptop, their tablets, or their iPads or Chromebook. And now I can measure these participations in real time. I can measure individual responses as well as team responses. And I can also look at the response time, how long they took to respond. All this can be reported out. And I can import all these results easily into Canvas because it's integrated. It saves time and reduces in errors. So with a lot of these new advanced features that I was using as an instructor faculty using TTPL and Session ID, rather than having the students just click on the ABCD as a clicker, that's just basically one capability. Now all of a sudden they can type in short answers. They can do essay responses as well. They can choose an area of a hotspot. And all these integration basically allowed for a lot more advancements in their capability and what they can do in a single classroom setting, whether it's online or in person. So the Hotspot question type I found was really powerful because we can display the results and scores in real time and show how the class actually understood the visual image and concept, because these are typically difficult concepts to teach. So you had to add a visual component to help the students and engage them in a different way, and be able to display the results in real time, import them, and know how many question types of audience responses were correct answers or incorrect answers, the total answers, their participation. This is just our Canvas website that we have from CNU. So I'm going to show you a little bit of how I design that dashboard setting from the dashboard, the Canvas quiz using Hotspot. I'll go to a course. I'll select in my course, I'll go down here where it says setting on the left. And you'll see when I go into settings, there's this part right here that talks about new quizzes. You'll see it down there. It says this feature enhances the Canvas experience for quizzing. So when this is flagged, this is enabled, the new quiz tools will be available. So when I enable that, all of a sudden you get this new quizzes enabled. It has a green check mark. You'll see that on the right, highlighted in the red. So when I go into new quizzes, you want to make sure that you select new quizzes. So this has more question types like hotspot, categorization, matching, and ordering. It also helps more moderation of accommodation and features. So this is as opposed to the old classic quizzes that does not have the hotspot capability. So if you have Canvas and if you want to follow along, go ahead and select on new quizzes. And now all of a sudden you can start to add all these different types of question type: categorization, formulas, matching, multiple choice, ordering, stimulus, essay, fill in the blank, hotspot, which is a big one that I'm talking about here, multiple answers, numeric, true and false. So now this is just an example of a report log that shows how we can moderate the responses as they're coming in real time. And the reports has quizzes and item analysis as well as outcome analysis. So I'm going to take you through an example of a typical report. You can see here in this item analysis, whereas the students, they got, in this particular case, it shows 100% correct, performance by quintile court. And this is just another reporting mechanism. So what I'll do is I'll go into this area. This is the classic quiz. It shows here no hotspots. But then now when we're able to create hotspots, it's kind of fascinating because not only can I create hotspots of boxes, I can also create hotspots of different shapes. I can do squares now, I can do ovals, I can do polygons, and each of these shapes I can stretch them in different ways. So here's an example of a question where I asked about clicking on the area represented by the cleanest part of the Ivy Star compounding hood and the conceptual representation of the United States Pharmacopoeia Chapter 797 facility requirement. So they would click on this area in the center, denoted by an area of a blue circle called the direct compounding area, and that would be the correct answer choice. Now all of a sudden I take my polygon shape. I could take a picture of I snapped this picture in our mock Ivy Star compounding room on the second floor, and I stretched a picture of a polygon hotspot, and you can see that area of the blue on the bottom where I created that shape myself. I stretched that image around using the polygon, and now I can have the students correct on the correct area if I were to ask a question about the area of the laminar airflow workbench, where the operator will work on the cleanest surface of the primary engineering control. So they would click on that area. And up here, I would perhaps I can ask them a question about the area of a primary engine control where the operator will start cleaning first in the Ivy Star compounding order of cleaning and disinfecting. So they would click on that top area of the picture. So notice that polygon shape has been stretched into a conforming shape that you would want to be able to identify in the hotspot. So that would be the correct answer choice. Now moving away from Turning Point and Canvas, I'm going to show you if you have the ExamSoft Legacy portal, not the Enterprise, but the Legacy also allows you to create hotspot question types. You can go into your hotspot question types here, click on an area and upload an image. In this particular case, I clicked on an image, uploaded an image of a person riding a bicycle, and I asked the students to click on the image of the person riding a bicycle. So here's the hotspot question type for Enterprise, because in Enterprise is a little bit better. You can stretch the polygons, but in the Legacy, you cannot. So here's the Legacy reporting feature. It's kind of limited. It doesn't have a visual representation, but it shows you results based on audience response. It can show you a reporting, and it could be quite useful. So I see many potential applications for hotspot question types in medicine, pharmacy, dental, nursing, biomedical research, and development. So here in medicine, like in an interprofessional education, perhaps you can ask the College of Medicine students to click on the area of the X-ray of the abdomen, the kidney, ureter, bladder area of the pelvic ureter junction, and then they would click on that area. Perhaps in this particular course in the biochemistry, you can ask the students to identify the structure of a DNA, and you can show them a diagram and have them click. Or perhaps in a biochemistry class, you can have them click on the correct molecule or click chemistry or enantiomer or diasteromer of a molecule. Perhaps in a biostatistics course, you can have them click on the area of the illustration that shows the concentration of studies in this particular forest plot of a randomized controlled trial. Or maybe in a pharmacokinetic class, you can have them click on the area of the Michaelis-Menten curve, where the Vmax is perhaps 1/2 of km or vice versa. And in the dental class, perhaps you can have them select areas of the teeth to kind of identify the student's understanding of the difference between an adult teeth versus a child's teeth, and have them select on various teeth. Or maybe in a cardiology class, you can have them identify in areas of a notch P wave, suggesting a delayed conduction across atrial septum, characteristics of a quinidine poisoning as denoted by that area. So these are various applications I can think of in education using hotspot technology and technology in combination. So the 4 aspects that I really like the most about TT-Poll, using all these various technologies I kind of ran through quickly, is that it no longer it was no longer an issue for students to forget to bring their clickers to the classroom, or if they ran out of battery or some unforeseen event and they couldn't respond. So now that all they had to do is log in using their session ID student account. So they can answer questions, they can type in responses as opposed to just clicking. and selecting a multiple choice answer, which usually was limited to just a few answer choices, A, B, C, D, or E. Now there's no longer a need to manually update participant lists. We had to do that manually before Turning Point. All this could be done using uploaded rosters through the cloud. The hotspot question types on a diagram, they've been scored in real time now using TT poll. So now I'm going to show you my top pick. So remember that slide I showed you earlier, the difference between Turning Point with Session ID, Canvas, New Quizzes, and ExamSoft. So the two ones I found best to use here at the College of Pharmacy was in particular Turning Point with Session ID and Canvas with New Quizzes, especially with that polygon shape, being able to shape out those hotspots. It was quite useful. So those are my other picks. Other useful features that I found that you can do if you are a user of Turning Point, the multiple choice, short answer, word cloud, numeric response, hotspot, true and false essay, demographic assignment, priority ranking, Likert, and icebreakers. These are things that we didn't necessarily go into in this short presentation, but they're all now fully capable. The objects, you can have correct answer, indicators, chart, countdown, grid, prompt, response, countdown, and stats. You can have students compete, giving them assignments, participant leaderboards, team MVPs, fastest responders, racing leaderboards, and you can have them wager. And in the tools, comparative links, conditional branching. I showed you one comparative link. There's also conditional branching, convert to picture, result slides, demographic comparison, and ranking wizard and standards. So in summary, as I looked and showed you at these three softwares that we currently use at CNU, the ability to engage students using hotspot capability, Turning Point, Canvas, ExamSoft, the fact that they now are able to build hotspot question types of assessments, provide students with access to learning anywhere, anytime, with scheduled versus interactive sessions using Turning Point, Canvas, and ExamSoft. They all have reporting features. Our Turning Point and ExamSoft are directly integrated to Canvas using CNU's Canvas LMS, and faculty are able to report out visual data and display results in real time. So my key takeaway in this is that we are no longer required for students to bring in their Turning Point clickers to class, setting up a channel via a limited distance via the receiver. The instructors may still choose to do that if they prefer. This was the previous way. The new way, students and faculty are no longer limited to these question types. Now they can type in or point to a question type on screen using their electronic devices. So as long as they have internet access, faculty in the classroom or online, they can utilize these audience response technology while performing student assessments, including hotspot question types. So the future directions are these listed here. These are what I thought is my future directions, encouraging more faculty to use advanced TT poll assessment capabilities during friendly competition or application exercises, the biggest one that I can think of moving forward. These are some of the references I looked at and read, and these are the acknowledgement that I have to thank our administrators, our IT department over the years for the support of faculty and understanding the needs of faculty, and how we're able to, as faculty, teach and engage our students inside and outside of the classroom using online or during scheduled sessions. So I'm happy to also entertain questions, just like this Dr. Islam Muhammad is at the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for your attention and participation.
Thank you, Dr. Menti. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and your work with that new platform. So I just want to, at the end and before other people might leave, I want to thank again our presenters, Dr. Islam and Dr. Menti, for sharing their experience and dedicating their time to present with us today, and thank the Deanship at the University of Baghdad College of Pharmacy for allowing us to organize such workshops. The attendance form is posted in the chat. Please sign up in it, even if you don't want the certificate. And the certificates will be emailed later next week. And with that, I'll open up for a question. The first question is Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali, you want to unmute yourself?
Hello, Dr. Islam. Hello, Dr. Menti. Thank you so much for those wonderful presentations. I'm Dr. Ali Jumaili from the University of Baghdad College of Pharmacy and team-based learning. I think I had this learning at the University of Iowa, but as an instructor here at the University of Baghdad, I found some limitation, like the time limitations, the space. So what's your tips, Dr. Islam and Dr. Menti, for the, like, if we don't have the physical facility for this at our large halls, we have only large halls basically, and we may have this round table at the lab, but at the large halls, we don't have this roundtable. So do you think we have like limited time, like within 15 minutes or 45 minutes, if we divide our students into small groups, how can we manage to answer their questions, to discuss with them, and within only 15 minutes? This is the first question. The second question, do you think all lectures or topics can be managed or presented as team-based learning, or because we have some theoretical, we call it, or coursework, we need to give information to the students, and sometimes, do you think team-based learning is always better than the passive way of teaching? Thank you so much.
I can help with this question. So to answer your question, I think, yes, it depends on the time, of course, but I think you can do TBL in as short as like 1 hour class. You just need to scale down the everything, all the steps that you want to do in a TBL session, just to the time allocated. Just to give an example, we use TBL for 2 hour classes, 3 hour classes, and so forth. So even if you have 1 hour class, you can start with a simple IRAT, like only 3 or 4 questions about the topic. Of course, before the classroom, you share the handout. If you really want to go the extra step of recording the handout and the videos like I shared in my topic, this will also eliminate the need to really do a lot of heavy teaching during the classroom. So taking advantage of the before class time or shifting the teaching outside the class time takes off the burden of like worrying that you have to teach heavily and in all the details again. So that's the first step. The second step, if you have like 1 hour class, you can start with like 5-10 minutes for IRAT, another 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes for TRAT, where they answer the same quiz again. And then you can spend another 15 to 20 minutes just rehashing the main concepts and linking it to the IRATs. As I said, at least that's the way I do it. Every IRAT question touches upon like a key concept in the class, throughout the handout. So you can really, when you go over the IRAT questions, you can cover the concepts again in 15, 20 minutes. And that's the point that I'm saying, that at this point, because you shifted the classroom or the preparation outside of the classroom, you remember that in these 20 minutes, you are just rehashing and connecting the big concepts rather than teaching in details again. And then you can spare the last 20 to 30 minutes for application. And you can maybe do 1 application question. You can create, if you have the facility to do like online, like Canvas in your system, that's the most efficient way, in my opinion, for 2 reasons. Number 1, there's no grading required, it's built in. And number 2, as I shared, that immediate feedback or analysis of the student response is very useful to direct the student discussion. But if you don't have it, you can create a simple quiz on paper, 3, 4, 5 questions. You can give them like 15 minutes or so to discuss in teams, and then report the results and lead that discussion. So it can happen. It just depends on how much, how many questions, how much time, and how much setup you can do in small class time. And also because, I'm familiar with the way of the different styles, like, and different programs in the Middle East and in the US. And most of the Middle East situations, like in Egypt, in my home country, we have dedicated class time for lectures, and we have dedicated class time for labs, which is called lab. Sometimes it's called tutorial and all of that. Perhaps if this can be another avenue for TBL, maybe you can keep the TBL for the labs, for the case discussions, for the tutorial groups, which is already designed for a smaller number of students, rather and then keep the passive lecture time or the classic, I don't want to say passive, the classic lecture time protected. So you can also mix. You can have a mix of like 1 or 2 hours of lectures, and then you can have 1 or 2 hours of lab dedicated. So TBL is a very good fit for these kinds of applications in tutorials when you do some case learning, some case-based questions, and all of that. So hopefully this helps with the first question about the timing and the lab setup. It's a little bit difficult when you have the classic lecture hall, المدرج زي ما بنقول بالعربي. So the lecture hall is a little bit difficult to do these team groups, but maybe you can be creative, like saying, okay, the first line is like one team, the second line is another team, and so forth, and try to split them into smaller groups to dedicate the discussion and facilitate it. So maybe that's another idea, but my point is, TBL is more of a concept, rather than sticking to the same exact components and trying to abide by everything of the rules. So the point, in my opinion, TBL, the most important things is the RAT in the beginning, the IRAT readiness assurance. So you force the students to read and come prepared, because they have a quiz in the very beginning of the class. And the second most important is the action applications. Now you are comfortable, you are familiar. And remember that the IRAT is not a very high level, it's just making sure that they read it, just reading. And then the application where during the class time, they get to practice and dig deeper, and then you can use more critical thinking questions and so forth. And what was the other question, Dr. Ali? About the facility, online resources or something else?
Yeah, the required resources and facilities to implement.
Yeah,
like
so
how can we implement it with a limited facilities? Let's put it that way.
As I said, paper-based, there's nothing wrong with it. You can also do the paper applications. It will require a little bit of work from the instructors. You have to print the paper applications. For example, if you have 100 students divided into 20 teams, you have to prepare like 20 separate sheets for every team. We used to do that, by the way. I used to do it in my own classes. In the beginning, I used to do a lot of the paper-based applications. But as the time went by, when I saw these online resources, it's much easier because it's there. There's no printing, there's no grading. That immediate feedback component is also there, and so forth. So if you do you have an online management system like Canvas? That's a wonderful resource. Canvas is actually very sufficient for all different kinds of questions if you have it. If not, Microsoft Teams is another also option. As I shared with you, if you spend some time with Microsoft Teams, you can be able to create quizzes and applications inside Microsoft Teams itself. That's another resource. And as I said, even without resources at all, you can still do it simply on paper. And if I'd like to give some advice, one of the disadvantages of giving a paper application to a team of students, just be careful that, if 5-6 students are working on one paper, sometimes it gets dominated by one student and the other students just sit down doing nothing. So that's the thing. Your role then as a facilitator is to move from different teams, try to encourage all the teams to work together. Maybe you can ask all of them to sign their names on top of the paper sheet so they are accountable for the answers submitted by their team. So what I'm trying to say is resources are better, but you can still do it without resources. As simple as a paper and pencil, you can still do a TBL, but you need to be more hands-on and you need to be more engaged and encouraging students to participate.
Thank you, Dr. Islam.
So I can also add
yes,
that one of the barriers I've been able to overcome with the limited facilities resources, I've trained the faculty on how to use the Zoom breakout rooms, and then now we're using Teams breakout rooms, which is a newer feature than the Zoom breakout rooms. So you can do a lot of the turning technology assessments, quizzes, exam type questions. You can schedule them ahead of time and have the students take it in various time periods, different rooms, not necessarily simultaneously. You can have them take it the day before or the day after. Regardless of when you assign it, they can all be programmed into the turning technology instructor account, and the students can take the assessment at any time that you choose, and you can block out the time period based on what time frame you want. And then you can have them go into various breakout rooms and report back. So I find that because I work with students in the P4 year, and they're all over the country at times, and they're taking exams online where we're doing online proctoring, and they're in various locations, so we can't have them all in one area. So we use a lot of breakout room technology to help overcome the space limitation or facilities limitation.
Thank you, Dr. Menti. And I think that brings us to the next question, which is how hard it is to control the breakout room comparing to in class, because when you're in class, you can see all the students and see who's doing something and who's just sitting back in the breakout room. And you can only be, as far as I know, you can only be at one breakout room at a time. So how hard it is and to kind of oversee everything.
Yeah, it does take some practice. With Zoom, it's kind of nice because you can have the roster preloaded, so you can control your breakout room from that advantage point when you have your student rosters and emails all preloaded into the room buckets that you want to place the students in, whether automatic or manual. That can be done. With Teams, it's a little bit more trickier. If you have multiple computers at your disposal to use, it makes it easier to control the breakout rooms because you can actually, in that sense, be in multiple breakout rooms as a single person. But if you don't have multiple computers, you're just essentially hopping from one room to another.
Yeah.
And you can assign students to various breakout rooms, whether automatically or manually. So it is a little bit harder to do with one computer on Teams. But if you had multiple computers, like at least two, it makes the job a lot easier to control where you're at.
I can share also additionally.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Islam.
Yeah, I can share also just a little bit more tips exactly from a practical standing point. There's two, you can also do, number one, you can time the breakout room, on Teams, on Zoom and others. You can, okay, now you have an application for 10 minutes. You can start the breakout rooms and add timing to it. That feature is available in Zoom. And I think maybe in Teams as well. And if you don't have the timing features, like what I did with the Teams, remember when I shared the Teams page and there's a list of the channels, I give them an announcement in the beginning in the general channel, like, okay, there's an application, you have 10 minutes, go to your team channels for 10 minutes and then come back. And during these 10 minutes, I jump from one channel to another to listen and join for the interaction so I can facilitate the discussion. And after the 10 minutes are over, you have two options as well. You can also time the quiz availability on Canvas. So this quiz is only available for 10 minutes and then it closes. So, they know that the quiz is over. And also you can make announcements verbally when you go from different channels and also back to the general channel. You can just send an announcement to all channels. Their application is over, or you have 2 minutes and then come back to the general channel. So there's, different ways to enforce it by timing the quiz, timing the breakout room, and actual manual announcements during the class to get back the class into the general channel after they finish the team discussion.
Yes, thank you. And you talked about Microsoft Teams. Is that compatible with the electronic course managements? Like other than Canvas, is it compatible with Google Classroom? Because that's what we use.
Yeah, I think, it depends. Sometimes I didn't really do a lot of the quizzes on Microsoft Teams by myself because Canvas has everything we need. But usually depends on the software. And of course, Dr. Menti is an expert in this as well. I think some softwares have the features that they work out a link. So for example, if you have a quiz on Teams, there's a link like to push grades to Canvas. Some people do it. I'm not sure if Teams itself has it or not, but it depends on the software. Turning Point, for example, that Dr. Meni shared in his presentation, they have that feature. After you finish the session, when you go to the grades page, you can click upload or push to Canvas, and then the grades gets pushed to Canvas. So it depends on the software. Otherwise, what you can do, maybe you can do it manually, like after you finish a quiz on whatever software, Google Class, even Kahoot, whatever it is, you can just download it as an Excel sheet and then either upload the Excel sheet to Canvas, or worst case scenario, you have to manually copy and paste, the grades for the students from whatever, report that you have into the learning management system. So it really depends on the software. And for me, that's why I like to use Canvas, because everything is there, everything is integrated. Once the quiz is finished, grades are immediately published and it runs very smooth.
Our institution doesn't have the direct integration from Microsoft Teams to Canvas Direct, but there is a way to do it from the back end with IT expertise. They could collaborate with Microsoft to create those pathways for integration. What we currently have in our capabilities is that we have the access to adding the various apps into Teams. That's the extent of our integration. But we can do things like forums. We can do things like media site. We can integrate that into Teams using the apps capability, but not a direct integration into our LMS system, because our back end has not been programmed to that level, which is available, but we just don't have that.
Thank you. And I think our there are two questions that are kind of connected. And I think these are to Dr. Menti, is in what way you found the Hotspot questions your priority method comparing to other ones? and the other ones that I think it's related to it, have you like looked at how students prefer that over the other platforms, or how the instructors like it better than other platforms?
As far as surveys, my understanding is that we are starting to do more ongoing survey types in our research studies of eliciting types of student responses, whether they like Hotspot or not. We actually haven't done that yet, but we are going to in the future, just to kind of get an idea of whether they like it or not. But for me as an instructor, I do like to use Hotspot. I don't use that as my sole question type. I kind of combine it with every other format. I'll have the students type in their answers. I'll have them write a short answer essay. And this is all done in real time where they're doing it electronically. They can be at home, they could be at school. It's all the same. They don't need their clickers anymore. They can just pull up their cell phones, their iPhones, and do all these responses in real time. And then I can collect all that. I can do word cloud. It's all done because of the TT Pulse session ID. It allows me to capture all that data and then be able to export it into Canvas through our integration. But I'm using a combination of all resources to make it more engaging and more fun.
Thank you, Dr. Menti. And I think that's all the questions I have. So with that, we come to the end of our workshop today. And I can't really thank you enough, Dr. Islam and Dr. Menti, for accepting the invitation and presenting with us. And thank our audience who stayed with us, and we kept you over time. We're like a little bit over time. Thank you very much. Also, we like to thank the Deanship Office at the University of Baghdad College of Pharmacy, the wonderful support team at Ibn Sina e-learning unit. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day, Dr. Islam and Dr. Menti. Have a good evening to all of our attendees. And thank you for joining us in this workshop. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dr. Arthur. Happy to be here and look forward to future avenues for collaboration. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're good. Have a good day.